Well, okay. Thank you very much, Jeff. And hello to everybody out at Port Washington. Even if you're not in Port Washington, like me, I'm in Queens, but wherever you are, welcome. Here in Queens, and I'm sure in Port Washington, spring is springing. Supposed to get up close to the 70-degree mark today. So I got my shorts out of my closet and I'm gradually getting ready for the spring. So probably a lot of you already know me. My name is Ron Brown, Dr. Ronald Brown. I teach history, political science, ethnic studies, history of New York at Touro College campus just down here at Forest Hills, not far from Elmhurst, where I live. And I'm a great world traveler. Every January, when I have my academic vacation, I go somewhere. Last January, I traveled all over Brazil for the month. And before that, it was January in Thailand or China or someplace fascinating, Ethiopia. And so this series, which I've been giving now for some time, on the great cities of the world. Recently, we did Cairo, and then we did Brasilia after my trip to Brazil. On February 19th, we did St. Petersburg, a great city on the sea built by Peter the Great. Well, today we're going to be doing another fascinating city, and that is Dubai. Now, if any of you have been to Dubai and have memories of it or comments, please feel free to type them in the chat line so you won't forget. And when I'm finished, Jeff and I will go through the chat comments and I will answer any questions you have. And then at the end, we can unmute people and they can give any comments that they would like verbally. So either the chat line or if you remember them, save them till the end. Okay, now, Dubai, one of those interesting cities in the world, brand new. I mean, as recently as 20 years ago, there was nothing there. But it is one of these fascinating cities, which when I was there, I had the feeling that I was living 100 or 200 years into the future because it is such a magnificently artificial city carved out of the desert by filthy rich oil barons and an entire city built out of nothing. And so it is really, in a way, a temporary city, a city that could disappear in a couple of years and new cities would be built elsewhere. So we're going to be talking about first the fabulous Dubai, which most people, for them, it's an airport or a shopping mall. But for me, it was an exciting city, fabulous. And then a little bit of the history of it, from camels, which what they had in the beginning, to skyscrapers. And then the future of Dubai, preparing for the end of oil as cars go more and more to electric, as the oil industry starts winding down and being replaced by other sources of energy, Dubai just might disappear. Well, they're preparing for the end of oil. Temporary city, city of the future, and the prototype of the city of the future. So let's get going. Now, Dubai, as you can see on the map on the right, you see Iran and Saudi Arabia and Iraq. And so little United Arab Emirates with its capital Abu Dhabi and then the city of Dubai is a tiny desert enclave. It is like Qatar to the north, Bahrain, even smaller, and Kuwait on the Persian Gulf. Now, why do these countries even exist? Well, of course, by all rights, they should probably just be gobbled up by Saudi Arabia. But when the British and the Americans won World War II and all these countries were becoming independent, the British and the Americans decided they were going to keep a toehold in this crucial area with all of the oil flowing through the Persian Gulf. So they set up these little tiny countries and are basically kept in power and kept independent by the American military bases. So in a way, they are very artificial cities, like Hong Kong, where the Chinese use it as their gateway to interfering in the affairs of China. And so this was how these little countries came into existence. Well, on the map on the left, you see again the United Arab Emirates. Well, it's a strategic location because it is halfway between Europe and Asia. It is halfway between the two big antagonists of the Middle East, Iran and Saudi Arabia. So it is a interesting area in the world. Now, this is what the United Arab Emirates looks like. Abu Dhabi is by far the largest of the Emirates. Each emirate is autonomous, ruled by an emir, and they came together and with British and American military support declared independence and did not become part of Saudi Arabia. Now, Dubai is beside Abu Dhabi, one of the larger of the Emirates. Abu Dhabi, the capital, it has a population of 1.5 million, but Dubai is by far the largest of all of the cities of the United Arab Emirates, and it has a population of 3.4 million. The Emirates itself as a country has a population of about 10 million. So it is a tiny country by world standards, but yet an extremely important little country tucked into the Persian Gulf. Now, I was there, got there on December 30th. I sort of anticipated my January vacation by a couple of weeks in 2017. That's me. And that's me going up to the top of the tallest building in the world, well over 200 floors, twice as tall as the World Trade Center, twice as tall as the Empire State Building, soaring up into the heavens. And that's one of the big delights of being in Dubai, is going up in these giant high-speed elevators and looking over the entire country. And this today claims, this tower still claims to be the tallest building in the world, but like everything in our modern world, you're not the biggest or the tallest or the most beautiful of anything for very long, because there's always somebody ready to add another 20 floors on, and then they can claim to be the tallest building in the world. So, but still, it is striking because it stands there in the middle of a city where all the buildings are much, much smaller, and it just soars above the landscape. It's a dramatic sight to see. Dubai is a city of skyscrapers, exotic, futuristic architecture. There's really nothing there of any age. In the middle to top, you see a building built out in the Gulf in the shape of a sail, like it's a sailing ship. Beside that, on the left, you see the palm tree and the other artificial islands. Now, these are not decorative. They are exclusive residential neighborhoods. The city sparkles at night because it is so dry in the desert that there's no humidity in the air to interfere with the bright sunlight. Now, Dubai is a city that reminds me of Los Angeles, which I hate. because I'm a walking person. I walk around New York all the time. I know garbage night in every neighborhood in New York and pick up all kinds of treasures and things which I can sell on eBay or my own collections. So this is a city that is not for walkers like me. I mean, there might be a sidewalk for a couple of blocks, and then the sidewalk simply dies. And there was me running across a 15-lane highway to get to the other side where I thought there might be a little bit more of a sidewalk. But it is an exciting city. Now, most people go there because they're either changing airplanes, going from one place to the other, or they're going shopping, which is the big attraction of Dubai. In fact, many people say the name comes from the English do, buy everything in sight, because there are no taxes, their prices are low for electronics and computers and cameras and cell phones, expensive luxury items of clothing, even alcohol, which you can buy at the airport, but is very difficult to find in the city of Dubai itself. Now, I stopped off there, never really planning to stay too long because I was flying from New York to Mumbai, or the old Bombay in India, and Goa for my January vacation. Well, I got to Dubai and had a couple of days, so I just went into the city, extended my stay in Dubai because it was such an exciting place to be. And then I flew off back to Mumbai and Goa. And then on my return, I extended my visit a couple more days because it was so exciting. So for me, like so many people, it was a giant airport, but I went out of the airport and explored the city. So that's the origin. Dubai, everything in sight. I mean, they give you maps, not of the city at the airport, but of the shopping malls. Many of them claim to be the largest shopping mall in the world. There are books written on the shopping mall. You see people, airplanes filled with people flying in from Africa, from Australia, from India, throngs of Russians and Europeans and Americans and Brazilians, because it is a glorious shopping area. Well, unfortunately, I'm not a shopper, but it was interesting just walking around and seeing this mixture of people. Some very wealthy people would even hire servants to follow them around and to carry all the stuff that they had bought. So it was really a shopper's paradise. Now, a little bit about the history. There was really nothing there for centuries. It was just a little tiny settlement, Arab settlement on the coast that never amounted to too much. You can see the famous Dubai Museum, which was a fort on the coast. You can see the cannons and stuff, but it was really of no strategic importance. It had been ruled over by an emir for a couple of centuries. And like I said earlier, it could have very easily been gobbled up by Saudi Arabia and disappeared if it hadn't been for the British and later the Americans who wanted to keep it independent so they could have a foothold, a toehold in the Persian Gulf. Once again, sort of like the British taking Hong Kong as their gateway into India. This was to be their gateway into Saudi Arabia. Well, luckily for this little tiny impoverished kingdom, in 1966, oil was discovered. People thought there was oil there because there was already oil in Saudi Arabia. But then in 1966, they realized that off the coast in the Persian Gulf under the water were huge reserves of oil. So suddenly the city and the country, United Arab Emirates, was awash with oil. And so it started to grow. We see the oil production. Look at the map. You see Saudi Arabia, huge producer, Iraq, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, Oman, Iran. These were the great sources of oil flowing into the Persian Gulf, being loaded on giant oil tankers like the one in the picture, and going off to Asia. In fact, most of the oil consumed by China, South Korea, Japan, all the countries of Asia comes through the Persian Gulf, which is why it is so strategic. When you have two countries at each other's throats today, Iran and Saudi Arabia, a war would be catastrophic even today for the world economy. And you don't have to go very far from Dubai, the downtown area with all the big glitzy hotels and everything, and see mile after mile after mile of oil terminals. Now, I love those oil tankers. When I lived in Southeast Asia, well, this was years ago, but I used to hitchhike on oil tankers when I'd want to go from like Singapore up to the South Pacific or something. I always knew I could get a free ride on an oil tanker because these oil tankers, the captains were usually Westerners, Dutch or Swedish or Norwegian, sometimes American. But the crew was always Indonesian or Filipino or African. And so there was a real division between the workers on the boat and the captains and the engineers. And so they were always glad to have a tourist like me sail with them for a couple of days in the South Pacific. So you see that even today, United Arab Emirates is a major producer of oil, producing more than countries like Oman and Kuwait, almost equal to what is produced by Iraq. So it really experienced the oil boom. Now, what was a little tiny country like Dubai going to do with all these trillions of dollars flowing into their coffers? Well, they couldn't possibly spend it. Well, I mean, there were just not enough people there. So what they did was they established, like many countries, Saudi Arabia, China, Kuwait, the Sovereign Wealth Fund. This is the money they couldn't spend. They didn't know what to do with it. So the government put it in a special fund and they went on a shopping spree. In the United States, they bought hotels, entire factories, airlines. It's amazing when you look at what countries like Saudi Arabia and Dubai own in the United States. Well, these countries, which were pulling in the money, but had small population, like even Norway, the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world, almost $1 trillion. Abu Dhabi, China. I mean, when we go out and buy all of our goods in the stores and it's always marked made in China, well, we are contributing to these trillions of dollars that China is using to invest. Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, China, Hong Kong, China, Singapore, Qatar. These are the trillions of dollars of oil, or, and as in the case of China and Hong Kong, manufacturing wealth. So while the United States is borrowing money to pay our latest stimulus package of what was $1 trillion or something, we borrow money from these countries so that we can get our stimulus check, or the cities and the states and the businesses can be bailed out from debt. So the United States borrows this money. We pay a very high interest. We are in debt up to our ears. But Dubai is lending us the money? Well, we look at the world map here. See the big X in the middle? Well, that's where Dubai is, equidistant between Asia and Europe, equidistant between Africa and China. And many people travel. They go to Dubai. Maybe they're Australians who want to go to Europe. Well, they'll fly to Singapore, get a cheaper flight, go to Dubai, spend a couple of days shopping, and then fly on to Europe. Africans fly to Dubai, and then from there, they'll go on to China or wherever. So really, Dubai can seriously claim that it is a city, a little country in the middle of the world. Now, the problem facing Dubai is, yes, it has all this money, but the oil is starting to run out. In all of the Middle East, oil is a diminishing commodity. You can only pump so much, and when the well is empty, there's nothing you can do. So the United Arab Emirates is preparing for the end of oil. Well, the big question facing the country is, well, what do we have? We have sand and we have salt water, and that's about it. So Dubai and Abu Dhabi have to reinvent themselves. So here again, this is a major question facing the country. See the book by Christopher Davidson, Abu Dhabi, Oil and Beyond. So that's a fascinating new chapter, preparing for the end of oil. Well, what is the government doing with all of its money? Well, it's not only building giant skyscrapers and museums and branches of museums, but it is also investing in the future. Here we see the Emirates Airlines, the official airlines of Expo 2020, which I believe wherever that was. But you see jumbo jets flying from around the world to Dubai. If you look at the map on the right, you can see Asia on one side, Africa and Europe on the other side, even flying from the United States to Asia. It is now cheaper and often more comfortable to fly from America to Dubai, spend a couple days in Dubai, and then on to Asia. Remember my last time, a couple years ago, I was in Thailand. I flew across the Pacific with a stopover in Seoul, Korea. And by the time I arrived, I was just exhausted and was ill for a couple of days, which is now when I say I'm going to go someplace distant, I always plan a stopover. Well, in the Pacific, there's really no place to stop over, maybe Alaska or Hawaii, but the airlines don't stop off in Hawaii. They do in one big 12-hour stop across the Pacific. Whereas now you can fly to Dubai and then on to Asia. And so it is really marketing itself as a transit hub. There is a university on every street corner in Abu Dhabi and in Dubai. 75 major foreign institutions have opened campuses in Dubai. On the right, we see the new NYU Abu Dhabi campus, which is growing in leaps and bounds. See the American University, Sorbonne has a huge campus there. Manipal University in India, Middlesex in England, American University in Dubai, Wollongong, I believe, is a Australian university. The British University, Canadian University, Murdoch University, I believe, is British, Amity University. Every country wants to have a campus in Dubai. Now, what was interesting is All of these universities have now adopted the American system of BA, 4 years, 2 years for the MA, and then a couple more years for the doctorate. They have the American system of credits, majors, minors, how many credits you have to rack up if you want to graduate. Most of these universities use English as their medium. Now, the Sorbonne uses French, but even the Sorbonne, and that's causing all kinds of problems in France, the students say, well, we want to go to the Sorbonne, but we want to do our classes in English because English is now the global language of the world. So Dubai is emerging as a major education hub. I met so many professors there from all over the world who would go to Dubai. They'd teach for 2 or 3 years at the university, same system, BA credits. Many of the classes are the same. Work for a couple of years, save their money, and then go someplace else and work. So it has the character of an artificial temporary city. In fact, every time I'd meet somebody in Dubai, I would always ask them, I said, well, when did you get here and when are you leaving? And that was the common conversation. In fact, they have agencies that if Professor X is there for 3 years, he just takes over from a professor who was leaving. And so the sheets are in the closet, extra clothes are there. There's still food in the kitchen. The one professor moves out in the morning, the next professor can move in afternoon and pick up same TV cable company. Everything is geared to a constantly changing temporary living situation. In fact, I often think if I ever end up retiring from Toro, that it would be a great place to spend a couple of years, and, right in the middle of the world. Every vacation I get, I could fly off to Thailand or fly back to Europe or even fly to the United States. And travel packages are included in your contract. How many months of vacation you have. You have a free flight twice a year back to your home country. If you don't use it, well, then you can get the money and go to Africa or Asia or someplace else. Recently in the news, Dubai just launched its first space probe to Mars. Once again, attracting thousands of top-notch scientists from around the world, as well as Arabs, as well as Europeans, Americans, Chinese, Russians, a huge Emirate Space Research Center. Once again, these are throngs of scientists who are there working for a couple of years, and then they just up and move someplace else. And so it's really, when I talk about Dubai as a city of the future, it is a temporary city, a floating population. Seems everybody I met was either just arriving or making plans for the next visit. Whether it were the Filipino girls who ran the hotel, the receptionist, whether they were the professors of English or French or science or mathematics at the university, or the scientists I met doing space research. This was a huge transient population moving on. In fact, 80%, some people say it's up to 90%, of the population of Dubai are transients, meaning there are only 15 to 20% of the population of Dubai are actually people with Dubai passports who live there and are citizens. 80 to 90% would be people like me, a couple years there and on someplace else. Dubai is the leading medical research center in the Middle East. People from Saudi Arabia go to Dubai for hospital care. I met so many Russians going down there for top-notch medical care. The Khalifa University, which is an Arabic and English language university, has the College of Medicine and Health Sciences. Ultra modern business because there's no history there. Everything is future looking. Look at that campus on the right, on the left, big horseshoe type building, all medical research center, a huge industry for this little country. Now, Dubai is also a Muslim country. Now, of course, I always got my red wine because I would go to a Chinese grocery store in Dubai, in the more popular neighborhood where I was living. And I would ask for my red wine, and it was brought out from under the counter in a brown paper package. I mean, I felt like I was dealing in drugs or something, but everything was available. But yet it is also a center of Islamic education, drawing students from all over the Middle East, throngs of Pakistani and Indian Muslims, Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Malaysian Muslims, Muslims from Africa going to Dubai. In the past, they used to go to the great Islamic universities in Cairo, but now they are going to Dubai. Look at that phenomenally shaped campus for the Islamic Center at the Zayed University. A very avant-garde, and I love the picture on the right because even the Islamic universities have adopted the American system of education. BA, MA, PhD, credits, minor, major, and the whole rigmarole for graduating. This has become the global method of education. In fact, when I lived in Moscow and Budapest for 2 years in the early 90s, they too were making the transition from the Soviet education system to the American. And I was constantly being asked to give talks on what the hell's a credit? Why do you have to have a major and a minor? What do you have to do to get a MA in history in the United States? Why are some classes 3 credits and some are 4? And you see, ironically, look at the Muslim girl. Well, we accept this cap and gown as part of academia, but don't forget, a bachelor in the Middle Ages was a young man who was not married because he was a clergyman. As long as you were a student at the universities of Europe, you were considered a minor clergyman. And you wore the hat and the gown of a Catholic cleric. So here again, when the graduation at Toro or here at a Muslim university, dressing up like a medieval Catholic clergyman, most people don't realize the origin of the cap and gown, but it is alive and well with graduation ceremonies and speeches and everything in the world today. One of the most striking architectural features of Dubai is the omnipresence of gleaming white, brand new mosques. Here again, the city itself is very futuristic, but when it comes to mosques, they go back to the medieval Islamic architecture. The mosque on the right, upper right, is a typical Afghani and Pakistani dome with the intricate carvings and the minarets. The one below that and the one on is more of the Byzantine style of Constantinople. The one on the left would be a typical Indian Mughal style mosque, but absolutely gorgeous. And Dubai is an Islamic center for students, for clerics, for conferences, for the study of the Quran and the study of Arabic. Now, Dubai is blatantly a temporary city. Statistics vary between here. One I came across 75 to 80 are expats, foreigners living there temporarily. Some people say that the actual figure is up to 90 expats. But without expatriates, people like me going and spending a couple of years, the city and the country would literally disappear from the map. And so as soon as you arrive, and even before you arrive, there's a whole library of information, such as the Expat's Guide to Living and Working in Dubai, expat arrivals, posters, how to move to Dubai, a guide for wannabe expats, how to move to Dubai, everything you need to know. Advertisements all over the place. Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Arab Pakistani school in Abu Dhabi for the hundreds of thousands of Pakistani and Indian Muslims who live there and work. They maintain their own schools where they can be taught English medium, but also heavy Arabic and also the languages of their homelands. Constantly advertising for new teachers. You can send your CV and get information, and you will be courted if you show some interest in going there, because jobs are available, and not just highly educated jobs, but waiters in restaurants, bartenders. Now, the bars are only in hotels and international hotels. They're not selling alcohol on the streets. You go to a Chinese grocery store and it's under the counter, or you can go to a big international bar and there's a guard there to make sure you are not a resident of Dubai or look Muslim. Abu Dhabi Indian school jobs, hospital jobs in Abu Dhabi. Once again, free recruitment. They pay your transportation there. They pay for your housing. They give you a good salary. They give you a twice a year return home to your home country. The airport, I love that. No education, no experience required. Basically screaming, please come and work here. Zaire Recruiting Agency, security guards, wait staff, you name it, everything from kindergarten teacher to garbage collection person to Air Force pilot to surgeon in the hospital. These are all jobs which are available. Now, as most of you know, when I travel, I stay in hostels. Now, you can see the room on the top there on the right, bunk beds. I just turned 72 on March 3rd, a week ago. And so you understand how when I stay at hostels like the one I stayed at here, I always request the lower bunk, because I'll tell you, with my vertigo and other issues, I am not crazy about climbing up and down. And then especially if you have to go to the bathroom every 2 hours, you don't want to be in a top bunk and climbing down with the lights off. So I always get the bottom bunk. So interesting. Now, what is interesting in the hostel is so many of the temporary workers in Dubai are men and women, single or married, but they don't bring their family with them, because housing is a very expensive commodity. Food is very expensive because it is all imported. Private schools are very expensive, whether they're boarding or just commuting schools. So a lot of people leave their wives and kids, or sometimes their husbands and kids, back in the Philippines or Indonesia or Paris or Nigeria, and they live in hostels. I paid about $15 a night for a bunk bed, a bottom bunk. And the hostels always have kitchens and television rooms, and there's always good public transportation. And it's usually a great place to meet people. And there were recruiters coming by all the time, putting up signs in the lobby, stay a couple more months, sign up, get a job, we'll pay for your room in the hostel. And so it was really quite an exciting gang of people, all experiences from all over the world, sharing their experiences. Oh, I worked for 5 years in Kuwait, and then I went and worked in London in a casino, and now I'm here working in a bar in one of the big five-star hotels, a transient population. Now, Dubai has a tradition of accepting other religious communities. With the girl who worked in my hotel, I went to the church on the right. And it was a mixture of Roman Catholics from the Philippines, from the United States, from Europe. And this particular mass I went to because there was a huge Lebanese and Palestinian Christian population. And they were living there. Their first language was Arabic. And so they went to the Mass, which was celebrated in multi languages, with the screens flashing up the language in Arabic or English or whatever. The church in the bottom left was a Mexican Catholic church, huge population of Mexicans there. And of course, the church was more than just a church. I mean, they had the social club, posters advertising jobs, places to live. And so all kinds of religious groups are welcome and discreet. I mean, there's not going to be a big crucifix on top of a church. They have Buddhist temples. They have African evangelical churches. From what I hear, they're even going to open a synagogue now that United Arab Emirates has an agreement with Israel, and a lot of Israelis are starting to go there. It's not a peace treaty. These are agreements, which could be canceled at any time, depending on how things go. There's no exchange of ambassadors and all of that, but they are possibly working toward some type of peace treaty between Israel and Abu Dhabi. This is a proposal, once again, sort of putting Dubai on the map, putting Abu Dhabi on the map as a place of religious encounters. And this is a plan that I came across for a church, a mosque, and a synagogue. Ultra-modern center for interreligious dialogue. In fact, I was offered a job there because my second MA from Harvard is in world religions. And when they heard that, I mean, they were sending me emails until today saying, please come and teach and organize programs on dialogue between the internet, between the various religions. There were even plans to have a big center for Hindus and Buddhists as an encounter area for dialogue and mutual research. There is a Sikh temple. Sikhs are from India. There is a Buddhist temple because a lot of Chinese young people have gone over there to work and to invest in real estate. There's a Chinatown, there's an India town, there's a French town, predominantly youngish population of kids graduating from college, working a couple years, and then eager to save up some money. Ran into a lot of Brits who were over there working hard, living in hostels or crammed into a tiny apartment, saving up their money, and then planning to go back to Britain and buy a house and get married or something like that. So Dubai was really a prototype of the city of the future. In fact, building cities out of nothing in the middle of nowhere has really become quite a popular trend. There is the famous Senegalese American singer, Akon Thiam, rapper and entrepreneur. And he is leaving his mark on his home country of Senegal by financing an ultra modern futuristic city, which he is naming Akron City in Senegal. Once again, building a city of the future to drag his country kicking and screaming into the 21st century, if not the third millennium. Now, these cities, such as Dubai, have a problem. It is deathly hot. I mean, you see the chart on the right. When I was there in January, that was winter. And so it was a balmy 110 all the time. So, very dry. Dehydration is a constant problem. Your skin just dries out because your body can't keep it humid, no matter how much hand lotion you put on, you constantly have the feeling that your hands are drying out. So in Dubai, basically, people rush from enclosed area to enclosed area. It's only really crazy people like me that would actually want to sit outside or go walking outside. In Dubai, you take underground trains or you have a car, which is an inside parking garage, and you literally go from building to building. Now, this is also very much the city of the future because I often got the feeling that I was on a spaceship hurling through space because you didn't have to see the outside world. You didn't have to go out. Everything was inside, climate controlled, and especially humidity controlled. Now, Dubai has invested very heavily in desalination plants. They have no water. The water is taken from the Persian Gulf. It is desalinated, and that is what they use to keep the yards green, the golf courses green, and the internal the inside of buildings properly humidified. And one day I was just sitting in one of these and I said, my God, I could be on a spaceship. And it reminded me of the film with Matt Damon, Jodie Foster, Elysium, a magnificent 2013 American sci-fi. And it was an interesting plot because the Earth had been ecologically ravaged by global warming, by fires, by floods and hurricanes. And so the wealthy people, the powerful people built a rotating spaceship above the earth, which they called Elysium, named after the Greek heavenly abode where great men and women spent an eternity, not the ordinary people. Well, that's precisely the situation. Matt Damon is not a member of the elite. He is living in the slums, enduring the polluted air, the crime, the deteriorating conditions of the planet Earth. But you'd see the deteriorating reality of the Earth, and then you would see the luxurious lifestyle in this magnificent spaceship. Well, the plot gets complicated. He goes up and there's a war and all of that. But that was the impression I got being in Dubai. You are literally in this totally artificial, created environment, totally oblivious to the 120 degrees outside. And this is becoming not so much just sci-fi, but as we look at the forest fires in California, for the first time, living conditions in California because of drought and fires are so bad that the recent census shows that California is losing population, and it is going to lose one seat in the House of Representatives. And global warming, hurricanes, everything that is happening in Texas and so many other places. Artificial environments are becoming a reality. And so many different movies show the planetary degradation of the earth. So cities like Dubai are going to be the way people of the future are going to live, under giant climate controlled domes. Now, the question is, who is going to be admitted? How many people can be supported in this world of artificial environment? In fact, we just saw a taste of that, or we are seeing a taste of it right now. Who is getting the vaccinations for COVID-19? They're not going to Africa and Brazil and India and Indonesia and Pakistan, the impoverished countries of the world. I mean, the United States, Western Europe, and the rich countries are snapping up every vaccine they can get. And countries like Mexico, well, die. I mean, and so we're seeing this very dangerous separation between the haves and the have-nots, whether it is antibody vaccinations against COVID-19, or whether it is living in a safe environment in an artificial Dubai-like or Elysium-like artificial environment. And if you look at desertification, the decline of potable water, half of Africa, both North Africa and South Africa, the entire Middle East up into northern China, southern Russia, even southern Spain is drying out. Look at the American West. Almost everything on the western side of the Mississippi is dry or semi-arid. Australia could almost disappear. Only a tiny area along the eastern coast is habitable. The rest is becoming an area of desolation, desertification, exposed to radiation, starvation, and wars. What is going to be the future? Climate refugees coming across from North Africa into Europe by the millions. Donald Trump building the border wall to keep out refugees from Central America, fleeing drug wars, fleeing epidemics, and other climatic conditions. And so artificial environments like Dubai are going to be the state of the future. And artificial worlds, whether they are on Earth under a dome, as Abu Dhabi and Dubai are, or whether they are in the middle picture, the world of Elysium, lakes and forests and grapevines and beautiful homes for the selected few, with the masses left to die on Earth. And one other one, floating civilization in space capsules. Well, this is becoming more and more our reality. Global warming. I mean, I love these pictures of Miami on the verge of disappearing. The one on the right shows New York City. If global warming continues, other cities of the world are going to disappear. So Dubai-like living is our future. Stephen King, Under the Dome. Domed cities protected from the outside environment, whether under a dome or a completely enclosed artificial world. I met a guy who was a climatologist in Dubai, staying at the hostel. And I asked him, what is the air quality inside all of these domed cities and domed department stores and everything? And he said it is meticulously regulated. Picture on the right at the bottom, you see the big, they call it the Gherkin. That's the big new skyscraper in London. There are even projects to put London, the downtown center area, under a dome to keep the air pure. Mars colonies becoming more and more a reality. We have our first American rover on Mars, scouting out a place for a future domed city. Even National Geographic is starting to discuss what would a Mars or a lunar city under a dome look like. Is it too late to save planet Earth? Should we start preparing for cities outside of the Earth and using the example, the experiment of Dubai as the prototype? So this is our future that we're all looking forward to. Now, of course, when we envisage the future of humanity, everybody views it as a city. Whether it is a utopia under a dome or floating on a spaceship somewhere, we look at the city of the future as the salvation for humanity. Well, that's why I'm so fascinated by cities, whether it's parading around Machu Picchu or Angkor Wat or spending a couple of weeks in Salt Lake City, city created out of nothing by a religious group, or the mythical Atlantis in the middle of the Atlantic. City is going to be the future of humanity. Now, whether it is a utopia or a dystopia, well, that is what we'll have to wait and see. So, this is Ron Brown. You can reach me at ronbrownmedia@gmail. Once again, always collecting information for future talks. On the right, that's me during the pandemic in Manhattan. On the left, I'm sure you recognize that. That's right across the street from the Eldridge Street Synagogue, an area in transition. I also have Facebook. Just go to Ronald Joseph Brown on Facebook and you will find me. So now that brings us end to Dubai. And just a reminder that in April, I'll be giving you a visit to Istanbul, the old city of Constantinople, the second Rome. And in May, we will be visiting Tel Aviv, the city of the Jewish spring, envisaged by Theodor Herzl, built once again in the middle of nowhere as the city of the future of the Jewish race, according to Herzl.